It has been a while, but we are finally back with the Look for Less challenge. Hi there, my name is Yami. I am your Latina next door. Welcome back to Mi Casa, where I share high-end home decor and DIYs on a budget, as well as extreme before and after room renovations. If that's something that interests you, please make sure to hit the like button and subscribe so that you too can become part of the familia. If you're not familiar with the Look for Less challenge, it is a challenge where I ask you to find a high-end home decor piece that you really love, and I ask you to recreate it for a whole lot less. I have a link in my description box where you can add your video if you participated, as well as check out everyone else who participated in the Look for Less challenge this month. You guys come up with some great things, and I cannot wait to see what you guys came up with this month. Alright, I know you guys have been waiting for this challenge, so let's go ahead and get started. So I happened to come across these beautiful bronze ring pillar candle holders on Pottery Barn's website. I really loved the way they looked. However, the smaller one is $69 and the larger one is $89. So the pair would have turned out to be $158, and of course, tax. So I thought these would be so wonderful to recreate. So I found these two rings on Amazon. You can very well use embroidery hoops for this, and I've used them on many DIYs before. However, I wanted something thicker and wider, and I'll have a link to these below in my description box if you guys want to check them out for yourself. But one of them is 8 inches and the other one is 10 inches in diameter. I needed a round disc for where I'm going to place the candle, and I came across these ornaments that I've had for a couple of years. I bought them at half off a couple of years ago, and I've had them in my stash, and I just honestly have not had an opportunity to make these over, so I figured it was a perfect time to use them for something. So the first thing I did was remove the little top pieces with my miter shears. And then I would sand the area where I'd cut it off to make sure it was nice and smooth. Then the little round disc needed kind of a little lip, as you see in this picture, so I needed to come up with something. And I had this stuff called Edge Mate, and it's basically what you put at the edge of plywood to give it a nice clean look. As you can see, it's used like on cabinets and stuff. These were from my studio, and I had this small piece left over. So I wrapped it around the disc to get the exact measurement that I needed for it to go all the way around. I could have left it the size it was, however, I wanted it to be a little bit more shallow, so all I did was take the Edge Mate tape and just slice it right down the middle to cut it in half and make the lip a little bit less deep, and I just used the box cutter for this. Next, I needed like a little bit of a dowel, and I just happened to have this little scrap piece on hand. I swear I keep everything, but I'm glad I did because now it works for this. And I just needed to cut it down into 2 small pieces. After I cut them down, I made sure to sand both ends to get any splintering off and just make sure that both ends were nice and level. I also had several pieces like this of plywood left over from when my husband was building my cabinets for my studio, so he ended up cutting them down into smaller pieces for me so I can use as the base for these candle holders. Now, if you don't happen to have any scrap wood like this in your home, you can always use these rectangular wood plaques that you can find at Hobby Lobby or Michael's. Since one of the rings was larger than the other, I also made sure that my husband cut one of the bases larger than the other as well. So after everything was cut, it was time to assemble, and the first thing I did was add that little Edge Mate tape on the border of that round disc so that I can get that little lip that I want from the original candle holders. And all I did was use some hot glue for this and work my way very slowly and patiently to make sure that it covered very well and it adhered properly. So once I was done with those, it was time to address the little bases made out of the plywood. Now, the original piece was a metal candle holder, and I didn't want it to look like it was a plywood piece of wood. So on the rough edges, there were some that were actually very smooth, but there was a couple of the edges that were a little raw, and it would have been really noticeable if I had painted them. So I took some plastic wood and basically just took a little spatula, spread it on there to make it smooth, let it dry, and then I sanded it later. Next, it was time to assemble, and I used wood glue because I wanted a very secure bond. And the first thing I did was place the hoop onto the base. Next, I needed to add the dowel, so that's what went on top of the center part of the hoop. And then finally, I added the round disc to the top of the little dowel. I repeated it for the second one, and then I set these out to dry. Once they were both dry, I took some sandpaper and began to smooth out the areas where I had applied the plastic wood, just to make sure that everything was nice and smooth. And I also sanded any other areas that I found that were uneven or might have had a little bit of a splinter or two. Once that was complete, it was time to paint. And the original pieces were a metallic black, obviously since they were metal. And I wanted to have a shine to them as well. However, I wanted to do a nice solid base coat of black paint. So I started off with giving everything a full coat of just black chalk paint. Then for the shiny coat, I used my Folk Art brush metal paint in brushed black. And I applied it all throughout everything as well to give it that metal look. I don't know if you can see my husband laying down on the floor in the background, but he wanted to stay and accompany me because I wasn't feeling too good this evening. So he laid on the carpet and was hanging out while I was painting these. The only thing left to do was to let these dry, and they were ready for use. Alright, so let's see how we did. For both of the candle holders, I would have paid $158, and I was able to recreate them for $17. Now this is what I paid for the hoops combined, as well as the amount that I paid for those ornaments since I didn't use them for anything else. Everything else that I used for this was already on hand and left over from previous projects. If you do decide to create these and buy everything, you can make them for probably about $25. So I think that's a pretty good savings.
Well, that's it for this month's Look for Less challenge. I hope you enjoyed it. I do have another Look for Less challenge coming up before the end of this year, so make sure you're subscribed so that you don't miss out on when that's going to happen. Don't forget to click the link in my description box and check out what everyone else created for this month. Thank you guys so much for participating. I will see you guys next week with another home decor and DIY video. Until then, adios.